That music, so fire.
But I think we got something even better cooking up right
Got
now.
some better stuff on the way. Forget about 1 minute intros.
Leif just got a little teaser of it, didn't you?
What do you think? Can't say what it's about, but what did you think of our little intro, our teaser?
Put it this way, I've never been a big country fan. No, I'm not one at all.
He doesn't like it.
Well,
He doesn't like it. Well, the lyrics are good.
we love it.
We love it around here. All right, so big weeks. Things are happening in Minot again.
Yes,
we
they
have,
are.
We have resurrected from this cold spell.
Welcome back. You were
Yes,
gone.
I'm back.
Yes,
I missed Thursday's North Dakota talk. Sorry about that, world.
Yes.
I know everyone was just...
I got to go on Rob's podcast and don't talk about it. Minot.
Don't talk about it?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I'm afraid that we are moving into a don't talk about it Minot.
Yeah, we're getting there. We'll get there in a second. We can talk about all of the city council events that happened last night.
Yeah, it was tumultuous.
It was a busy night. We're going to talk about some state stuff and some fun articles.
I know Rob's been here because his mic is low, and he likes his mic low. It's not anything to do with it.
You're not eating it, yeah.
Yeah, so gotta fix that. Thanks, Rob. All right. So let's talk. Well, and also we have a guest today.
Yeah, we do.
There's so much excitement about everything else.
Well, we were talking earlier. I'm kind of overwhelmed. My zone is flooded.
Oh no.
What happened?
What? It's Tariff Tuesday. We were talking. It's like, have we taken over Greenland yet?
Not yet. The ships have yet to sail.
At least it's the Gulf of America, so we got that taken care of.
I was
official,
watching
yes.
some testimony down at the state. Like they got committee meetings going to like 8:30 at night.
Yeah, I heard you were excited about
so
that.
So you want to run for office? See, there you go. Want to go to work, 8 till 9 at night.
Oh, Kyler got fired.
I'm fired?
Don't talk about it, man. I got fired.
That's why I was invited as the backup option.
Yeah.
Because I think I might have proposed this before. If Rob calls you his sidekick, what does that make me?
Yeah, well, fired because you're saying
it don't matter no more.
Don't talk. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, Leif. A lot going on. 8:30 at night that makes you want to become a legislator, right?
Well, I used to watch city council meetings going, thank God I didn't get elected. I mean, hey, 5-hour meetings.
Dude, last night there was a lot of stuff that got taken care of.
Like less than 2 hours, yeah.
Okay, how many unanimous 7-0 votes were there?
Let me pull up my notes.
Quite a bit.
There's a rumor going around that the system wasn't working. I'm kidding.
It was an interesting council meeting.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just jump into there.
11 of the 12 agenda items were consensus unanimous votes.
Fall cleanup week.
Yeah, let's start there.
What do we think about that?
It's going to happen still. There was some talk and possibility.
Maybe.
Well,
as of right now, it still happened. Potentially another proposal.
Something will come.
Mayor Ross said you have 9 months to get this.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to figure it out. But for a fact, it sounds like it won't be how it has been in the past.
Dude, some of those pictures. Oh,
yeah, some people.
There's a lot of stuff.
Loaded some stuff up on the.
I don't know how they got that much stuff out of their house.
Hey, full remodel, I guess. But now it sounds like it's still yet to be determined for a fact, but it sounds more like it's going to be, if you can't fit it in the garbage can, it's probably not going to be picked up. But there will still be some semblance of a fall cleanup week.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on that. Klug settlement finally happened. It's done.
Got that determined and figured out with the city. There was a couple interesting
faults.
No fault.
Nobody's at fault.
No one can sue
time
each
to go
other.
away.
Yep. Well, but he's not. So he's going to stay on payroll until next spring, but he's not actively being paid a salary.
Right.
He's just being paid out as any kind of PTO that he's had accrued.
Right, and he'll continue to accrue.
Yeah.
And then he can still have access to the insurance.
Yep.
And but not his WSI.
No, and he can't apply for any kind of unemployment benefits, anything like that, and he is able to take a different job.
Right.
So that has all been settled. That is officially moving on to the next stage.
Was that the best option for their Leif?
I don't think it's a bad option moving forward, but I do not like the nothing to see here attitude about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no fault, nothing to fix. We don't have a problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a work in progress, but it's not really anymore. It's kind of, at least for the next 6 months, sounds like it's settled on.
Yeah. There's an interim But there's no timeline on the interim.
Not
But
now.
going back to Klug,
Yeah.
yeah, it is kind of a weird deal. I was thinking about that today as I was preparing for this. Kind of a unique deal, but most of it's just because of legal stuff.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they agree to say that there's no fault. So legally, we can all just move on and all be peaceful.
No one has to worry about it. It can be amicable, and it can effectively be put in everyone's past.
The thing that matters, though, is what the city's next response is going to be. That's what matters, because there is a problem.
Yeah.
That's apparent. Whether that's Klug's fault or not doesn't matter anymore.
No.
We just better get this fixed going forward.
Yep. It is now the city and police department's job to work on this issue and get them resolved at this point.
Yeah. So, all right. So the next deal was the interim decision. This is the one where we're going to spend the most amount of time on it.
Yeah,
so I think, first off, Kyler, break down what happened, and then we'll go around the room.
So yeah, agenda item got brought up. It was later in quote unquote, later in the session. It was the 11th agenda item they talked about. Alderwoman Olson motioned to bring up the second alternative option to it. And then, so the initial motion or the agenda item stated that City Manager Harold Stewart had found an interim replacement, an officer out of the West Fargo Police Department that he had vetted, gone through the process of, and he was now recommending to be hired as the interim police chief for the city of Minot. So Alderwoman Olson presented alternative 2, which is to effectively decline the hiring of the new police chief or the new interim police chief and continue with current interim chief Plessis, which there was some discussion around the room, and it ended up getting voted on.
There's not a lot of discussion.
There wasn't. There was some, but there wasn't a lot. Most of it came from City Manager Harold Stewart.
Stewart, the city manager, mentioned a few things. Most of the discussion that happened beyond that was just clarification to make sure everybody knew what they're voting on.
Yeah.
That's the only discussion that happened.
Which it was, at that point, made very well clear and apparent what everyone was voting on, which they were voting to effectively deny Harold's proposal to bring in the new interim chief and to continue with Dale Plessis, which not necessarily... It's an interesting thing.
I think,
and here's...
go ahead.
I was going to say, here's why. And it stems back to the meeting they had at the beginning of January. It was unanimous, and it felt very consensual that everyone wanted to have a new outside interim chief at that point. And so it got voted on unanimously then for Harold Stewart to search and seek and find an outside interim. And now, last night it gets brought up, and it gets shot down when he found said interim.
Yeah, so if you roll back to, I believe it was January 6th.
Something like that.
Right around there. I know, and I could be wrong, because I
give or take a day. Yeah.
But, so there's this city council meeting that city manager Harold Stewart brings forth recommendations. They got to get this done so that way they can go watch the NDSU football game, remember?
Yeah, national championship game.
So, brings forth these recommendations, and in that was... We're going to hire an interim chief, and then after 12 months, we'll have our full-time chief. It was mentioned by one of the aldermen, Mike Blessom. Do we need more time for this interim? Should we go and say up to 18? Is there anything else better, basically, that we can support you? He's like, no. I've already talked to recruiting companies. They said that
if you get over a year, it starts to feel like it's such a permanent thing at that point.
So he wanted to stick to the year time frame, and he said that basically this hire will be on me, and then the full-time hire, that is one that we will collaborate with the council, we'll collaborate with the community. There'll be a lot more collaboration that will happen for the long-term fix. But basically implied in his remarks that this interim one would be something that he would just get taken care of in place so that way they could move on. So essentially we'd be taking a lot of responsibility on that hire. And so then when it was time to go ahead and pull the trigger on that hire, it didn't happen. Got voted down. Leif, thoughts?
I found myself sitting there going, what happened? Like,
Yeah.
This hire is in the audience. Like, he came up from Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden we balk and say, no, I guess we're going to go in a different direction.
Right.
I was talking earlier, like, I don't mean to compare a police chief to sports, but and I'm not a football fan, but how many games are in a football season?
17 in the NFL.
Okay. So if you're 2-15 your season, you say, we need to change. We need to change the culture. We got to fire the head coach. We got to
move on.
We got to move on. Do you then say, hey, let's take his assistant coach and put him in place? Or we agreed on, no, we should look outside. We need to make some pretty important changes.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, we're 17 officers short. We cannot retain and we cannot recruit officers. It's very difficult. So what are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
I think we need a cultural change. Nothing against Mr. Plessis. I think he's a respectable, fine person.
Yeah, there was nothing but good things said about him last night.
But did he even apply for this interim? Like, I have the resume right here of the recommended. It was part of the packet.
Yep.
He's qualified. I don't know if Plessis is qualified to act as chief.
Yeah. So one thing Rob Fuller mentioned in the comments, and I was just going to bring up, when they fired coach, they placed one interim or 3 before they hired a new coach. It wouldn't be. I don't have a problem with Plessis being the interim. I don't have a problem with that. That kind of probably flies a little bit in the face of some things, but I don't have a problem with that. And matter of fact, when it first started happening, I was like, does this 1-year interim position make sense? When that recommendation came forward, I wondered whether or not it made sense. I don't know what all I said on air. I know that Kyler and I had conversations off air about it, because it is kind of a weird deal. Like, how do you set the direction and stuff like that when you know you have somebody else that's going to come in and have the long-term vision of it? I think it's important for the stabilization. However that works and however that looks, I think that's important. My biggest deal does not come from Plessis being there. I know a lot of people in the public appearances time were saying, if you got the guy that trained him, then I'm sure you make great. I don't think the guy needs training.
He knows what he's doing.
I know I'll go against perhaps some that's being said, but I don't think the guy needs training. He's already done a fine job leading it. He has the support of the officers right now. He's already been in the interim position. He's doing all right. I don't think he needs training to do this. I think he will do fine as an interim chief. If he were looking at long term, I think some of the questions that you brought up would be very important to ask and make sure that he would be a fit for the long term. But in the interim, I think he'll do fine. But right now, in my opinion, optically, it looks like at the city, mom and dad are fighting. City council and city manager are fighting. And something that I thought after the meeting last night, I thought to myself, how much longer is city manager Harold Stewart going to be here? Because you could tell that there was something very unique that happened last night. It was a very pivotal moment that happened there. And I'm not saying that council is going to vote manager away. Yeah. I'm saying that I don't know how much longer he is interested in being around in the current environment. It was a strong thing that happened.
It was a.
It's not easy to be given direction here, go do this, and then to be told, yeah, we don't like what you did.
Yeah. And to be fair, and I think hopefully, because we'll have an interview with Rob Fuller, Alderman Rob Fuller, this week. Hopefully there's some internal conversations that potentially happened, and internal, you have to be careful. I'm not saying that there was 5 council people getting together and having these stuff but a one-on-one conversation, whatever, passing comments, whatever happened, that will spread a lot more light on maybe some of the reasons why the council were led to that decision. There is another side that we don't see right now.
100%.
There's absolutely another side.
There's a reason everybody or 5 people decided to flip the script effectively.
Yeah. It just, for me as a citizen, I was bummed that there wasn't more discussion that was had at the dais to break that down, because optically, what it looks like optically right now is that they cut off the legs of city manager. Now, perhaps city manager Harold Stewart forced that position. Maybe he knew the optics, how they could look, and
forced their hand into the situation.
Forced their hand into that situation and said, I'm going to control the optics of the entire situation. That's also a possibility of something that could have happened. But I am kind of concerned about this, and I'm also concerned about the empty HR position that we have now and what other candidates are going to think about wanting to be hired on. Even a full-time police chief. Do you want to go to Minot and be the police chief right now?
It'd be tough. Like, on top of the whole plethora of issues Minot might have and of recruiting someone that it might in the first place, now you have, which again, that's a whole different story, but now you have all of these other issues coming on top of it. You have it probably isn't this way, but you have an optical appearance that, your city council's at a crossroads with your city manager, and they're not being able to come to terms on what they want to put forward.
And to interject this,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with there being a crossroads between them. That to this point, there has been at times. There's been a crossroads. There's been action that city council has taken that city manager hasn't always agreed with.
Yeah.
And I think to this point, it's been fine. This just felt different.
It's fair. I think that's a good, you're right with that. And there is healthy points when they should come to points of disagreement, and it is a good thing. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing in the long term. It just feels like it, for lack of better terms, it feels like a slap in the face of Harold Stewart at this point.
It does.
And again,
there's another side of the story that we're going to be able to hear later this week.
Yeah.
And that hopefully will provide more clarity to the situation. But yeah,
I find the opposite. Well, I'm trying to think the order they went in the agenda. There was lots of discussion about, we're not going to move forward with, I can't remember his name. It was the interim chief.
Was it Osterness? Something along
like
those
that.
lines? Yeah.
Began with those. I want to say Ocean
After
Tag,
that
he was a basketball player.
After that was the agenda item. I believe it's a $25,000 contract to search for a new HR director.
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
Yeah, we want to talk to you about that one.
Yeah.
No discussion whatsoever, but we're going to go look elsewhere in a past.
Instead of going internally.
Now, I would agree. Let's go elsewhere.
Right now, I don't think any major hiring should be happening internally.
Yeah, okay. That's a fair point at the stage where we're at.
I'm not going to pretend it isn't part of it. The issues are tied together, I think. I've stated that many times before. There's morale issues that have to do with HR.
Sure.
Yeah.
Back to what you were saying earlier, would another chief want to come in? When you start looking at the history of shadow files, that's a problem. That's why I think we need a cultural change. Now, I will give the city attorney props here for when she went to the police station and said, I want to take possession of these shadow files.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there is definitely some things that need some serious changing.
Right. No, I agree that there are some things that need changing. I think that the police department being in disarray is one thing. And I think a police chief would be like, there is a guy out there that would be, hey, I get it. I'm ready to take on the challenge. But the thing that would be very difficult for that person is if there is, and maybe we're just reading it wrong, but if there is conflict at all in the city leadership, in the core city leadership, then it is going to be very, very difficult for that police chief to come in and set a new course without that being fixed first. I think it's very important that Minot's on the same page there.
100%. And one other point that was brought up by his city manager last night was the potential timeline for actual change to be enacted at this stage, because they're going to stick with the interim chief. It doesn't sound like they're going to make a ton of...
This is a really interesting part that we need to discuss.
It doesn't sound like they're going to make a ton of policy or, for lack of a better term, disciplinary changes in the interim period while Captain Plessis is in charge.
But
yes.
The city manager, Stewart, gave the impression that he would be fine if an outside interim chief came in and did that stuff, but he was not fine with Plessis doing that.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting.
It feels like he wanted an outside person to come in and be almost a hatchet man, to come in and take care of a lot of problem situations or whatever it might be. And now all of a sudden, with keeping Captain Plessis in charge, it feels like they just want to not rock the boat, just keep the ship sailing as it is and wait until you get that full-time hire, whether it be 6 months or a year plus from now, whenever
it doesn't have to be. Because if you're going to not rock the boat, it needs to be 6 months or less.
I agree with that, but I don't think you can guarantee that it happens in that time frame. Yeah, and to further off of that, Harold Stewart was saying last night that it could take up to 1.5 years to even start seeing any practical changes start to happen in the police department at this point. Which, I mean, it may not be. Maybe this is all. And there's a alternative point that I think Alderman Pittner said, where this could almost be a progressive thing for the police department too, because, hey, you have all these people that have been through so much in the last few months, all sticking together amongst their own and trudging through and getting through the better at the end.
Yeah.
That's a paraphrase, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's the point that he was getting across.
So leadership is so important. The worst thing, or a bad thing that could happen, is that the police department gets so bonded together that when the new guy comes in, we fought our own battles, and now we don't need to listen to you.
They're completely against him at that point.
So there's some really important stuff that needs to be resolved fast. Harold Stewart was giving off the impression that he really didn't want to be involved in some of that stuff. He wanted to get an interim chief and then a permanent chief in place so that way they would take care of it. And I don't agree with that. I think the permanent chief needs to have full reign capability to run as he would like. And if we don't agree with that direction as a city, then he's fired, right? That's how that works. But for an interim chief, I think it's very important that the city manager is very involved in the operations that go on there, because that city manager is the conduit between the interim and the long-term police chief. It is important. It is imperative, especially in this time of turmoil. When you have a time of turmoil as a leader, it is your turn to step into that and help get things sorted out so that we can get back onto a solid direction. So his comments where he's trying to distance himself from what's happening there were kind of concerning to me. I felt like there should have been a more active approach that he is taking with some of that stuff.
Leif?
I don't know how you can go with the same personnel you've got and expect change. I just don't see it happening. Maybe, hopefully, things will change.
Okay, I interrupt you, okay? I'm really good at that. That's one thing I've gotten really good at. But you go to the Raiders a couple years ago when they fired Josh McDaniels. Since we went, you opened the can of worms of football. They fired, and it happens a lot with Raiders. They fired, I believe it was Josh McDaniels this time. They had Antonio Pierce as an interim head coach, and the Raiders did well. They did well to the end of the season. They made Antonio Pierce their permanent coach, and they did terrible, and he's fired now. And they've moved on. But as an interim thing, he was a man of the people. He was somebody that the players engaged with. They had good talent. Perhaps even they had good scheme in place. It was just a matter of getting somebody that the people believed in. And when the players believed in Antonio Pierce, they fought, and they were able to win some football games. Same thing happened to them, Raiders, with Rich Bach, whatever the special teams coordinator for them. Rich,
from like 5-6 years. Yeah.
And same thing happened where I think they clawed their way into a playoff game or something like that.
And then he got fired.
And then they didn't keep him, and he went on, and the turmoil of the Raiders continued. But my point is, like, I don't agree with just because that Plessis was in the same leadership area that Klug was, that Plessis could not bring the right direction as an interim. As a 6-month person,
I can agree with you
where
on that.
he can get the morale together. Hey guys, we're going to stick through this. We're going to fight through this. We're going to be better. Long term, permanent. I don't know that Plessis is the guy, but in the short term, I think that he could be that guy. I do. Well, I don't think that's a problem. Yeah, but he could also next month be fired. So what I'm saying is, for that position, I think he can be fine.
And so you're pretty much wanting to see him and Harold Stewart be hand in hand on this next 6 months.
Well, I mean, going forward, that's what has to happen. Yeah. But I'm not a fan of how it got to that point. That's my biggest problem is I'm not a fan of how at the January City Council, the City Council said, Harold, we like your recommendations. We're behind you. Let's get it done. And then when he takes a step to do it, from the public's optics, when he takes a step to do it, they say, no, we don't want it.
Yeah, it's not a great look from the outside looking in.
I understand that there's other conversations that have probably happened.
But we weren't privy to any of those conversations.
And that's why I just
wish
there was some discussion that happened on the dais.
Yeah.
Okay, we keep on, and I do this myself, we bringing him back to the sports analogy. But there's a reason for that. That's what this is team building, essentially.
Yeah,
and there is a riff, or there might be different camps, or there's some animosity. Not everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction at the police department or with city employees in general. That's part of the problem.
Yep.
So I look at it from, it's a manager standpoint versus the coach. You have a general manager. Their job isn't to coach, but they do have to work hand in hand. Now, for the city manager to say, Plessis, you can't make any of these changes. Well, that hinders the coach. Like, you can't, it doesn't work, I don't think.
Right.
If Plessis is the guy who can get everybody pulling the rope and turn things around, then give him the power to do so.
Right, yeah. Don't go and say, okay, you're going to be interim, but we won't let you do anything.
You're doing it in title.
We're going to tie our hands. Yeah. No. The city manager,
that won't work.
City manager and interim chief need to work together, need to set the direction, need to decide, hey, we may not know the actual tangibles of how or action items that need to be completed in order to complete this, but this is our goals going forward. This is the direction that we're going to head. This is the culture that we're going to, and that begin to set that direction. So then you can have a new chief come in and begin, okay, I get where this is headed. And you have a city manager that's involved in that. You have a city manager that is able to bring that same direction to the next person, next chief, and then they're able to work together, and then the reins are handed over to the next chief. The city manager should be involved in the interim process.
I think that's fair. I in the interim process, I think that's fair. I think when you have that full-time person, that is when it's time for him to,
that long-term person.
Your long-term, no longer interim police chief. The head coach was stuck in my mind there. But at that point, that's where you find the person that is fully capable of handling the job on their own. You let them take the reins, and at that point, you sit back and see what happens, because the buck does stop with Harold Stewart at that point. He is where the final say comes to, and he is the one that's in charge at the end of the day. But when you have that experienced police chief in tow at that point, he's the one that's really steering the ship, and Harold Stewart is more in the captain's quarters.
Yeah, I'll say this, and this isn't very nice, and I like Harold Stewart a lot. So this isn't targeted at him, but in general, if a leader's going to put somebody in place but doesn't want to mess with it, then it feels to me like they want to have a region. If it doesn't work out, basically a way out the side door to say, hey, I put the guy in place, he didn't do his job, we got to get somebody else. I think no matter what, the interim is on the responsibility of the city manager, and in this unique situation, in this case, it is probably on the city council too, because they chose to have Plessis.
Mm-hmm. And again, I feel like this could have been something that was figured out a month ago, where they could have.
That's the most bummer part about it.
And
there's probably other variables again. Hopefully we'll have a conversation with the city council person later this week. Because
the one thing, everyone at city council and Harold Stewart as well had nothing but glowing reviews for Captain Plessis. No even remote suggestion that he's doing anywhere close to a bad job.
Right.
And I think you made a fair point. Him going forward isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's
how
not
we got to this point.
Yeah, no one expected this to happen because of the directions that were given prior.
Yep. I mean, we talked about Minot being open to development, and we talk about that Circle K project. Is that a statement of Minot being open to development?
Sure.
And I think the same thoughts need to happen right here. Like, how open are we to what message are we sending to people that are interested in working for the city of Minot as being a good work environment? That
you can be offered the job, but it can still be taken away from you at the dais.
Yeah, and so we are really hammering that point, and I agree with that point. One thing that's unique about this point, to be clear, so like it can be broken down, is based off the January, the first meeting in January, city council meeting, Harold Stewart had the authority to go do the interview, get the prospect, the hiring candidate or the candidate to hire, and have them ready. They just would have to be approved by city council. The long-term one, city council and the community was going to be involved. Mm-hmm. So there was going to be two different hiring process there.
Completely.
So with HR, it's going to be two different hiring processes, or it's going to be a different hiring process than happened here. There's going to be an outside recruiting firm, probably going to have an interview with city council most likely. There's going to be a very...
to get a feel what they're looking for. Yeah.
There's going to be a very interactive process there. So it's not going to be something that keeps popping up, but it is a weird moment that kind of makes you think twice.
Yeah, it definitely, it threw me for a halt when I saw the vote last night. I wasn't expecting that.
To say that it threw him for a halt might be putting it lightly.
I was texting you guys, yeah.
My phone blew up.
Yeah. I was a little under the weather last night, so I couldn't make it in person, and it was probably not a bad thing.
No, I wish you were there. I wish I could have seen those your smile get a little frown.
That smile turned upside down.
Yeah. So, but that's not all that happened.
No.
Anything else? If you have comments on that, leave it down the comments. We'll definitely address them. But something else happened. You kind of already mentioned it. This is the one I was so happy this all came out yesterday. We had been hearing rumors that the HR director had said, "Hey, I'm out of here." That resignation was effective the 31st of January. And Leif, thoughts?
The floor is yours.
Is this a day of victory or sadness for you?
No. I'm not going to gloat about that kind of stuff.
That's good.
I want the city to move forward. I'll be honest. That's what I've always wanted. There has been a problem with how hiring and promotions have been handled from what I have learned talking to people. And public comments last night. It was related to the whole police chief situation, right? There was someone wondering why the proper channels hadn't been followed, correct?
Something like that.
Along those lines.
But there was even discrepancy in what they were saying.
Right.
They weren't really the whole proper channel. I'll tell you what, that fires me up when you talk about the proper channels with the investigation. People, I don't get that part. But anyway,
I'll tell you why they weren't handled. Because nothing ever got done.
Yeah.
Policy was not followed.
We're on the same side there.
So if I complain about Kyler, I mean, he did something horrendous.
Don't complain to me. I've already tried.
I rigged the vote in the Krug Cup.
That's
you would do something
my
like
hot
that.
take, man.
Sorry.
But
inside joke.
You can't upset the process to the point where if I go and report something that I think needs to be reported, I'm not going to do it because any chance I want at a promotion or a different job or moving on, I'm kneecapped.
No, that's a good point. No, that's
the problem. And that's why I want to see the city go outside for an HR director.
So you don't want it? You don't want to do it?
You could be the interim.
You could take over for Tom
No,
Joyce.
because then I'd be in the audience saying, "Hey, here's Leif's resume. He's gonna," and then I'd get kneecapped and shut down.
No, it only happened once.
Won't happen again.
It's not gonna happen again.
There's no way.
I can't even get appointed to a committee in town.
Fair.
HR director may not be in
might be a little
future.
Yeah. But one interesting thing, and Leif, you already mentioned this. So the city of Minot is hiring a firm to lead the search for the HR director. I did a little digging into it. You know how much it's going to cost? I think you said the term already. You said 24. Yeah, a hair under 25,000, which I don't know how much it should cost. I guess maybe that's a fair market assessment, but it just feels like a lot.
Now keep in mind, this is a department head, a pretty
an important one for the city,
very important one.
I feel like sometimes with costs like that, we get up in arms about it, and it's like. It's the same cost for a business too.
Exactly. Like it's probably
when you're talking about a key role.
It's probably not anything out of the realm of ordinary.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
How much value would you place on having a quality HR person in? Like how valuable is that to the city?
I feel like that's a top 5 department head in the city.
No, put a monetary value on it.
I'd have to look at what they make and probably increase it.
Would you pay $50,000 to have a top tier HR person in
probably.
Okay,
and
well, we're paying 25.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not opposed to that. I just thought it was an interesting thing.
Yep.
Maybe, and again, maybe we're getting a good deal on it. Maybe it is typically in that 40 to 50,000 range.
Yeah,
You could look at what the investigation costs.
But my point is this: with city budgets, we get so worried and we're trying to decrease. But also, you have to look at the value. What is this worth to us? Would it be better if we did it ourselves and don't know the process and everything to make it happen correctly, or hey, we're going to pay 25,000, we're going to get quality person.
And you make a good point with that. And to a similar vein, there was a lot of discourse I saw online leading up to this meeting about how much they were proposing to pay the interim chief, and I think it's in the same vein of what you're saying. Is like, if you want the right person, you have to be willing to give them the money that it takes to get them here to do the job.
How much was it? Like $5,500 a week?
I think it
was
like
about
that.
the same salary as what Klug was making. Yeah. So some of those numbers were incorrect by people posting.
Yeah,
and that's sure I saw it was $5,500 a week, but I could be off.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where it's worth, if to get the right person in there, it's worth it. If they're not the right person, obviously it's not it. But
right,
yeah.
Can I interject?
Please
there?
do. Yes.
With HR, if you get the wrong person, it also costs the city money.
Cost you way more.
Yeah.
Okay. There's an ongoing lawsuit right now with former employees suing the city. I believe it's going to trial here pretty quick. Well, the whole investigation, could that have been avoided if we had a strong HR person who said, no, this is the way you have to do things. You can't do this, this, and that.
We're going to pay the interim one $18,400 a month.
That's it. Okay.
It's a crazy amount. Yeah, well, I mean, this is, some might feel like this is a shot across the bow, but, I mean, we're going to be paying out a year and a half of PTO to a police chief, former police chief, because perhaps a wrong hiring decision was made. I believe we're still paying a former city manager because perhaps a wrong hiring decision was made. And some of that stuff you can't foresee. I'm not saying that it was the bad choice at the time. I'm not trying to play money more quarterback to that.
Yeah.
But my point is, it matters.
You never know.
It's worth investing in hiring because if you can get it right, you will save yourself money.
Yeah, because going into it, you never know what's going to come. But to be able to have that dollar figure to invest in them gets you likely a better option coming forth.
Yep.
Okay, we have roughly, I think it's 470 city employees.
Something like that.
Not enough.
Well, 470 employees. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So HR is an important position.
Absolutely. And it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
It's not enough. We're 15, 16 police officers short.
We are. It's bare minimum that has to go up at that point. I think they even said 17 last night.
Yeah,
and Harold Stewart made a great point. It's like as soon as we hire two, it's like one or two leave.
Yep.
Just can't gain ground on it. Hopefully they can get that finessed in the next few months coming up here.
Absolutely. Interesting things happening at City Council.
It was a fun meeting.
I mean, you can't pass this part up, Leif. How about the public appearances? That was a good time. You into the idea of combining the police and sheriff's department?
That idea, there's
like
valid thoughts.
It's a good opinion.
Look, you shouldn't
criteria,
stop people from
Meets all the criteria.
Having opinion on ideas. All this legislation down in Bismarck, it comes from someplace, right?
Yeah.
But also, I think anybody should go to the podium if they have an issue. If they want to speak to it, that's fine. Go ahead. But also, you have to have an understanding on complex issues, such as, like the whole notion that I got last night was people going to the podium was to back the police.
Yep.
But this is abolish the police. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of taken back.
But it was...
And, okay, but under the notion that, the Ward County Sheriff's Department takes over.
Yeah.
We'll merge the two.
Make a small town, I felt like.
Remember, you do have separations of powers. The city cannot, exchange funds with the county because they're taxing authorities.
Yep.
So, that kind of gets... okay, so let's say the Sheriff's Department was, an elected leader. That was kind of his point.
Yep.
But now you have the sheriff, he or she, their bosses being the Ward County Commission. Okay. So what if you have the city of Minot that has no elected people on that board? No. Where does it weigh out? There's...
My thoughts on it is it would only work on a very interim basis to make not merge them, but to make the sheriff over both on a temporary basis.
As a transitionary kind of thing.
Right. If they were looking at that as an interim option. But as far as actually trying to combine them, I understand in some areas it might work. I feel like Minot's a little bit too big for that, and it would really cap the ability for us to grow. Just one of those things that keep you small.
Yeah, if it was something in a smaller county where Minot wasn't there, obviously, maybe like a McHenry County or something. Yeah, you could. I think might even be the case. Honestly, I don't even know if anywhere there has there. But regardless, maybe Washburn does. But Minot's a little too big for it.
Everybody's got a ticket from that guy.
Of course,
I haven't.
Okay, and because you brought it up and I was there, like, you don't see me going around telling people what their hairstyle should be, do you?
Fair, because yours is pretty boring.
Okay, like, hypocrisy does kind of register with some people.
Yeah.
So when you go to the podium singing the praises of Elon Musk and Trump, you have every right to do that. But then when you bash the governor, who you absolutely hated,
in that same sentence,
and now who's the governor but the appointee of Trump? to the
Not just that, he was a finalist on his VP list.
It kind of makes you go, a little bit. But
That was
good discussion.
There was a lot of personal appearances last night.
All right, so I think my favorite personal appearance was the one that came up after. It was making sure everybody got their 5 minutes. I was thankful for that. It was so perfect way to cap it off.
You think you cut him?
Be good.
Think anyone got cut off too early?
Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, it did feel that way. So I went on YouTube and I
you timed it?
Checked out the timestamps on it, and yeah, they were timing them to the moment, almost as soon as 5 minutes hit. Hey, you're at 5 minutes. Wrap it up. Well done. I liked how city attorney got involved. Say, hey, we're doing it right.
Had to read the whole bylaw that involves the rules of order. Yeah.
Yes, it was just a really good time with the personal appearances. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was something. There's no doubt.
There was one legitimate one.
Yeah, the first one was fantastic.
Well, they were all legitimate, but there was one that was very
had a identifiable claim and something that could have actual solutions come to it.
Yeah, something that could be resolved even at that city council almost.
Yeah.
And that was the one that went on longer because there was interaction.
Yeah, because
questions
then the council asked a couple questions. And
honestly then brings you to the discussion, was it handled right? Because after the city attorney read how the bylaw reads, then there should have been discussion on whether or not they were actually going to take time to go over this personal appearance or not.
And there should have been
about a whole other bag of questions, but we'll let that slide.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned to you earlier, it's one of those things where does a city council meeting really have to get to that sort of minutia of details?
Or we need to vote whether or not we're
going to talk to this guy. Yeah.
Right. Or exceed 5 minutes to talk to this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the bylaw didn't read that if the city council asks a question, then you can have over 5 minutes. It read that there needed to be a
vote,
either a quorum or a vote on whether or not they would waive that rule for that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Nonetheless, good times. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back in 60 seconds. You can go and time that if you want. It will happen in 60 seconds.
It's within a second.
Yeah.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
And we're back.
We're back.
Guess who's back?
We are.
Us.
Okay, so there was an article that Rob Port dropped, and it's always good to have a good old Rob Port article on the show. Well, so we are today.
He's probably the biggest media figure in Minot that has a statewide following.
He wrote a state spending cap proposal brought to you by Vibes, Not Numbers. That was the title of it. Great title. Good job, Rob. So basically, there's this bill that, in Port's words, populist activist Mike Blessum, also a member of the Minot City Council, dreamt up a state spending cap, basically a proposal. But then there's a couple things that he mentions in the article that really just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't really appreciate them being said.
It was very scathing.
Blessum, who masquerades as a limited government conservative, now has his hands on some local purse strings and doesn't want the state to impose limits on his spending. He was also a proponent of Measure 4, a ballot measure voters defeated last year that would have prohibited taxes on property values. So his point is that, or Port's point is that Blessum doesn't want to have his spending ability limited or capped. But what's weird is the only budget that Blessum has been a part of, he decreased spending.
Interesting.
Port.
Yeah.
It's almost like Port doesn't care about the facts.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah. Oh yeah, facts don't care about your feelings. Also, something that Rob Port decided to drop. And sorry, Representative Wolf, as I'm quoting his article, but facts don't care about your feelings, which is something that is a neat line and everything. But crazy enough, the conservative Rob Port, the self-proclaimed conservative Rob Port, who voted for Kamala Harris, that line actually comes from Ben Shapiro.
That's a Ben
and
Shapiro
to be fair, honestly,
catchphrase.
perhaps Ben Shapiro got it from somebody else, but Ben Shapiro uses that all the time. He's got the T-shirt, literally, and the hoodie, and the coffee mug.
Yeah, that's
he's got it all, man.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Have you ordered all these products?
I have not.
And
I only have one product from there, but I won't say what it is.
Fair enough. So here's my little take on it.
Yeah, talk about it. And honestly, let me finish,
please,
because all I've done is I want to. We've reached out to Rob Port to have him on. Okay, so I would love to have this conversation with him. And not
more so than anything, I would just love to have a conversation with someone that is for caps, because I want them to explain to me how it's a legitimate reform and not just
right.
But,
so. That too, but I would love to have a conversation with Rob.
Yeah,
it would be fun to have him on. It would be fun to talk about one of his articles like this. So, Rob, it's all a good time on my end as far as I'm concerned.
Do love your work, regardless.
But this, I don't know how I feel about the state cap and all that stuff. Like that point, some of that stuff he may have a fair point on. But the biggest deal is I just didn't feel like his article really did justice to what's going on. It felt very, very skewed and biased.
Very pointed.
Yes. All right, go ahead.
And so it goes with the state level cap. I don't like, he made a fair point in this, and I don't disagree with it, that I don't think it's a great thing for the state. There's so many government, federal level things that come through the state as pass-throughs that are just going to happen one way or the other. And it's hard to guarantee what your spending increases and decreases will look like year to year because of that. So I think just putting an arbitrary 3% cap on state spending isn't a good call either.
But it's a point. They're making a point.
That's exactly what it is. It's not the fact that they're trying to actually get this bill through. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that they're making a point that's saying, hey, if you're going to try and cap us at the local level, we think you should be capped at the state level.
Yeah. And I've said it before, and I'd love to hear your take on this, Leif, but it's incredible to me when Governor Armstrong gets on the radio show, and when they say how far ago commissioners say maybe you should cap the state if you're going to cap us, and the first thing that Armstrong does is start talking about all the different projects that they would no longer be able to fund to local areas if they cap the state spending. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if the state is going to have to cut out projects in order to have a cap, then what makes you think that the local subdivisions aren't going to have to follow the same process? Which means they're going to have to rely on the state. It's a deal where they're trying to take away local control. That's my feelings on this. They're taking away local control by this, and keep it local. If you're passionate about Measure 4, you got to be passionate about this too.
Feels like it.
Leif, let's get some other perspective on this.
Tell us we're wrong.
Well, is it a chicken or the egg thing? Like, I think caps are good, you think caps are bad, and then I turn around, I think caps are bad, and you think caps are good.
Yeah. No, it is a little bit of that.
It's
by all means.
Like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. And
here's the deal. I don't like, you talk about, I think caps good, all that stuff. I don't like the idea of a cap, but I understand that if we're going to have property tax reform, there's a chance that a cap may have to happen. And if it was set up right, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But to go and say, we're going to give a check back to the citizens to cover their property tax bill,
because they owe a different taxing body this money. Mm-hmm. That's where it gets so messed up.
And then we're going to cap that taxing body so that way they don't go too high, so that way we can keep affording to be able to give you checks every year. That's not reform.
Right. So now this is where it gets so weird, because you have the city council, who is a taxing authority. If they raise taxes too much, then voters should be able to say, hey, you know what? And that's what happened, right?
Yeah, it feels like it happened last year
got out
here.
Of control.
Yep.
And they said, no more of this.
Got different city council people.
So then they vote those people out. Now, this is the perfect segment. Don't let me forget about that gift.
Of course.
Okay.
Oh, no.
He's got something for you.
Oh, no.
It doesn't make sense, because it pits one community against another.
Yeah.
Well, literally what happens is, now we have a city council who's done a good job at reducing their budget.
Yep.
But because you're getting rewarded with money from the state, or your citizens are, other communities are rewarded for raising their taxes.
Right. So as a citizen, if I'm getting a check back, and I know this isn't the way that it is immediately, but in the long term, 10 years from now, if I'm getting a check back that covers my property taxes, the city can spend as much money as they want. Why do I care anymore?
Exactly.
What's the point? It's just a cyclical thing at that stage.
Okay, like you have children, they're probably not old enough yet to spend money, but I remember my parents
They
raising
take my money.
So, that's what allowance was about, teaching me how to spend it. You need to save money here, splurge here, wherever. But because
oh no,
I get the impression you're not a fan of the governor's bill.
Oh no,
and the can being kicked down the road.
Oh no,
I got the perpetual can to be kicked down the road.
Yes, we have a can we can kick down the road,
and it's full of Band-Aids, because that's really what we're talking about.
Yep,
it's perfect.
No, I love it. This is the truth.
No,
it is.
This is where
a can of empty
I
promises.
actually liked Scott Lauser's proposal.
Sure.
This had to be a moment.
To take what's in the Constitution, saying we will pay for the education of students in North Dakota, and basically take that away as a taxing authority.
Yeah.
That would have been a 25, maybe 30% reduction in property taxes for everybody.
Yeah. Right.
Like things will shift.
Yeah, let's start trying to find ways to
I don't
fix
think
things.
it's going to get any traction, but
because again, I feel like I've hammered this fact home for weeks at this point. But you're just taking the buy downs from, as of right now, being paid out from the general fund, and you're just transferring it to the legacy fund. Yeah, and it's just you're changing where the buy downs come from, and I don't think that's any actual reform.
It's like a parent giving their budget, their kids' spending is out of control. They're so like, all right, fine, this is what I'll do. I'll give you my credit card and I'll put a maximum on it, and that's all you can spend. But spend as much as you want, and that way you won't have any more problem with your budgeting issues.
Sure.
Okay, sure, that fixed it all, right?
Of course.
Now their habitual spending problems are gone. Like no longer worry because they have a credit card that has a max on it. Whatever. That's not true.
No. And again,
spending problems are still there.
Leif, do you see any? Obviously, Lauser's school proposal is one. Do you see any others that are really jumping out at you that show some real reform? Because obviously, the governor's one is the one that's taking the biggest center stage.
The first forum, when Hogue got up and spoke and said, this is kind of where the momentum's at, and I can't remember how he exactly phrased it. I was like, well, here we go. And I did talk to Lauser afterwards, and I said, well, that's pretty hard to buck the governor. And he kind of shook his head, and we had a lengthy discussion about it. I mean, that's the direction it looks like we're going. Mm-hmm. And when you had, 47, 50 proposed bills,
just on
there's a reason he was, I believe the governor was testifying in the committee hearing, one of the first ones.
Yep.
That's the direction they want to go. There's a lot of talk about, evaluation, like going to square footage, and I don't know if that's a great idea either. Okay. When you think about it, maybe like lake property, tax sometimes on how much shore footage you have, right? That's not really fair because it's based on evaluation, but if the cost to a city to say, like, clear the streets, should we incorporate how much curb and gutter footage you have? Should we tie it to what it actually costs the city for you to have that property? Because I'm willing to bet the most efficient properties are going to be densely populated apartment buildings. So should they pay the least?
That adds.
Right. And so that's a question that I have. And apartment buildings are unique, but just in general is like if I have a 1,500 square foot home on Valley Street versus a 1,500 square foot home in the Bluffs, wherever that's at in Minot.
That house is valued wildly differently.
It's going to be $100,000 to $200,000 difference in price right there. Why should the house in the Bluffs have to pay more property tax than the one in Valley Street?
Yeah, that's where I got to agree with you. It's not necessarily fair. It's
like, if anything,
like the evaluation process has gotten out of control, and it's state law. That's what's just weird.
Mm-hmm. Because it seems like the one on Valley Street might even need more services.
Oh, undoubtedly, especially based off the location, being on such a main street like that. That's one of the snow roads in town,
So
one of
you
the
got
emergency snow
routes.
route. Yeah.
And then it'd be also interesting to run. I don't know if this applies to Valley Street, but just in general, it'd be interesting to run to see where reports, to see where the most like police calls go, fire calls go, and stuff like that, to see where your services are being spent at in those areas too. Because
try to target it a little bit better.
What about you broke it up into like, in not quadrants, but the city into segments? It's like, okay, this is a very hot, you're gonna move to this area in town, that's fine, it's a very high call area, you pay a little more in property tax.
Yeah.
Like actually base it off of services rather than just like, oh yeah, you got money, we'll take it.
Exactly.
Well, that'd be interesting because you would pit people on the lower economic spectrum of things.
Why?
You know, is crime in those areas a little more? I
Why?
don't know.
Why? And if it is, they're doing it to themselves in some cases.
Well,
And I
yes, because, okay, here's a perfect example. Have you ever called the police on anyone?
I have never called the police on somebody.
No. Can't say I have.
I have called the police, this is years ago, on my neighbor because they were having a domestic.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll leave it there because you mentioned his name earlier in the show.
There you go. There you go. The sleuths can figure that one out. So, but like, it's just weird how it's just a blanket based off. And if you listen to the show, you know my analogy that I'm working with, and I like it, so I keep rolling with it. Of you go into a restaurant, they ask you how much you make, and that determines your price you're going to spend at the restaurant. That's what property taxes is in Minot, and that's ridiculous. So
now, in some European countries, and I don't mean to throw other European countries under the bus here or something, but some speeding tickets are based on how much money you make.
that's ridiculous.
That's wild.
That's ridiculous.
I'm not arguing for it. I'm just
Sounds like
putting
you
it
are.
out there.
It is a precedent that's been
Yeah.
set at some place in the world.
So
Yeah.
get
Because
this.
what's the deterrent to someone who's a billionaire? What's
for
to
a
stop him
$150
from?
ticket, yeah.
I'm rich. I don't care. I'm going to do 160.
Yeah.
It's still the same danger. It's still disregard for, other people.
I have a question for you, Leif. If you were going to make $232,000 a year, would you be
Sign me up.
Would you be a city council person?
This is a trick question.
Yeah.
Because you realize how much they make.
Well,
that like
that's how much money they make in LA. $232,000 a year.
But I bet a city council person in LA is probably a full-time job.
Probably.
Yeah.
$232,000 a year.
Yeah, that's insane.
The city attorney makes $278,000. They make $50,000 less than the city attorney. $45,000 less than the city attorney, and the mayor makes $302,000 in the city of LA.
Okay, so to answer your question, I have to say no because I'm not living in LA.
I know, but that wasn't part of the part of my question.
Yeah, that does sound enticing.
It's crazy, man. It's
That is
crazy.
wild. So are you advocating for raises for city council members?
You know what? Honestly, I'd be fine with that. Not to that level.
It's a lot of work for very little money.
I mean,
It is.
how much? If you're gonna get a part-time job, how much money should you get paid a month in a part-time job, estimatedly? And I'm not talking about a part-time job working at Shields. I'm saying you're just going and
okay, so
and
you're
it's just
talking like what, 20 hours a week, part-time job?
At most, probably, yeah.
yeah, like typically you take like what's a good household salary? That a low one would be $4,000 to $5,000 a month. Like if you have a family, that's gonna be very hard to live off, right? I think the a council member could make $1,800 to $2,000 a month.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
reasonable.
that would be quite an increase.
It would be a dramatic increase and it'd be closer to what goes on at Ward County Commission.
Yep.
But I think that it definitely could get raised there. That's not going to hurt the city of Minot anything. It's going to mean that we
collective-
can't buy Kemper's Edition or something. I don't know.
What it'd be a collective like 30 grand or something?
Something like that.
A year?
So, I mean, if you just went and cut off one of Ackerman Asphalt projects, then
It's paid for a decade.
yeah. So, why are you gonna,
Sips coffee.
Sorry, I had to. I about cough.
But no, it's a fair point you make there, and I would like to see some.
Tyler's wanting to run in a couple years, so he's trying to get the raise
Whoa,
now.
whoa, whoa!
If he can get the increase now, it'll make it easy to run in a couple years.
And well, here's a thing that we discussed when I first came on the show a long time ago, and that's the premise of having a full-time mayor.
yeah,
obviously,
I think we're early for that.
Fair, because obviously, if it doesn't happen in a place like Bismarck or Fargo, it won't and probably shouldn't happen here. But that's one of those things. And
But and you probably made this point then, like some of these things, like why do we always look to them for justification for anything? The fact of the matter is this: do we have enough not places to attend to, shake hands and represent Minot, but do we have enough issues that need to be addressed by this mayor? Okay, how much time do we think that's going to take? Make sure that we're paying well for that.
An adequate amount.
Yeah. And what the city people get paid now in the city of Minot and probably in Bismarck and Fargo is not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough when you have
a full-time job and a family at home.
But respectfully, they've earned it and everything. But you're paying city manager, chief police. Those jobs are getting $150,000 to $200,000 a year. You're going to pay an interim chief police $18,000 a month, and your mayor makes $1,500 a month.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand that we're vastly different positions, but also there is a lot.
There's a discrepancy there. But then on the flip side, if they ever try to put that through in a budget, now they're just trying to give themselves a raise,
why it has
and
to
it's
stay low.
So that almost
why don't you go to public appearances and start counting this point?
I don't think that would be a publicly. I don't think people would agree with it. Do you? Because people hear price goes up, so they get mad. They don't think about the depth of it. They just see that they're trying to. I'm advocating for a raise for public officials, city councilmen, and the aldermen up on the dais, and they're saying that I'm in their pocketbook somehow. I'm just trying to think of
Are you?
I'm not. Okay. If I am, I don't know where the money's going.
Yeah, well, they don't have money for you to be in their pocketbook.
Exactly, that's the thing.
That's one of the things about it.
But it's one of those, it's a catch-22 because if they ever try to present it, they're going to get yelled at. And
you know what's crazy?
What's that?
It takes almost a year's worth of salary for a city councilman to run to be city council.
I believe that.
I mean, if you put $10,000 into a campaign, you're going to have to work almost a year to make that back.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I could not believe how outspent I was. I didn't have much, I'm like, wow, it's not as easy as people think.
No.
Especially if you're running in a race with 8 or 9 people for 3 spots.
Yeah. And even then, we were criticized for all different kinds of things. Like, if I recall, it was 6 males running, right?
That's your fault.
Then,
for sure.
Females go run.
I know that's your fault. You should have just not ran.
Now, back to a full-time mayor.
Should have identified as.
I'm going to tie
Buddy. Come on.
I didn't say it. I didn't finish it.
Some of the discussion last night dealt with sidewalks.
Yeah, that was a point.
I believe it passed unanimously, but I believe Blessom made the comment of how, do we really want to be putting this burden on property owners to be shoveling their sidewalks? It was 16 below last night.
Mm-hmm.
I walked from my house to City Hall. Okay.
That's the mile walk? Mile walk? Mile and a half?
Yeah, about that. Takes me about 20 minutes. But here's my point. Should that matter? Like how cold it is out? Because I'll be honest, I'm very pedestrian. You guys know that.
Yeah.
There are areas in town, walks aren't shoveled. I got yelled at the other day. Get your bleep back on the sidewalk from a motorist. I'm like, okay. And then I point to the 4-foot drift and the guy's house blocking the sidewalk. Like, what's the person supposed to do? So if we go the route where we don't need sidewalks, you're going to see more pedestrians and kids walking in the street because that's the only option.
Yeah.
So, there's a give and take to everything.
There is.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're... Yeah.
So my point is, if Mayor Ross wants to go shovel sidewalks, I'm all for a full-time employed mayor.
Yeah, you're being funny. But are you being funny? No, I'm kidding.
It's a valid point, though. I mean, to it, it's it's the surface level. It's haha, but no, you're making a good point with it, too.
There's more to being mayor than just... and city council.
That's my point.
I'm not saying they're not doing that work. It's a lot of work. Like the committee meetings, the everything. It's hard to keep up with.
Exactly. They're paid on a part-time basis, and it's effectively a second full-time job when you take it on.
Right. And
if you want to do it right.
To the conversation that we had beforehand briefly about the legislators becoming full-time. Like, okay, we don't want to do it because we're trying to save money, but what it lends to is either you get somebody really young that doesn't have any expenses yet in life, and so they can run, or you get somebody that has a lot of money. And those are the people making decisions, not the common Joe.
No, and a lot of that structure has to do with when we were very agrarian, lots of farmers.
Yeah. So they were able.
Harvest got done.
They could go to legislation over the winter, and they could go to Bismarck.
It's done before spring planting.
Exactly. That was the goal of the citizen legislature back then.
I think we'll find the same thing at the city council, though, is that, like, I mean, for me to be a city council person, that's not something that I have my sights on, but like that would be a sacrifice that I don't know that I could make.
Yeah, could you even take the time out of your schedule to try to fit that in at this point? You'd have to stop doing something.
Right, yeah. There was stuff that you'd have to begin to give up, and I understand that part of
That's
serving
part of public service,
but also, I mean, part of life is making sure you have enough money to buy eggs these days, you know?
Yes.
So it's all give and take, and I don't think we can have chickens in town. So maybe if we fix that,
allow
might be a chance.
coops in backyards.
Yeah, might be a chance.
There might be a black market for
chicken eggs.
Backyard chicken coops now.
Also, genuinely, you make a good point. I think we should allow chickens in town. I don't think that should be. I don't like that that's outlawed. But
Rob Fuller was on here. Get on that, Rob.
Come on, Rob. But aside from that, too, I think we talk about increasing our city council's pay, and you mentioned the full-time legislature. I think that should be a priority over city council.
No, but the thing is
it's more the principle.
They both can be taken care of pretty easily. You could go and raise the city council pay by $500 to $700 a month, and it wouldn't be a problem.
No, it's a pittance of what could come out of our reserves, and just get transferred over.
Right, you would be able to cut something. You'd be able to roll back something so fast, and they're not even advocating for it. This conversation
is us
literally just came
spur of
up
the
on
moment.
the spur of the moment.
We had no notes on this. This is just conversation flowing.
But the truth is, it needs to be higher. It needs to be higher.
100%.
Leif, do you think it needs to be higher?
I tried to calculate the hourly wage.
It's like
one time.
Less than minimum wage.
It is.
If you're doing
it, came out to like $4.30 an hour.
Yeah,
I'm like, oof. This is
just brutal.
I wonder when
it's being a waitress or waiter without the tips.
I wonder when the last time this is something we might have to look up.
No, it happened in the last 10 years.
Has it? Okay.
It was right after the restructuring. I think it was a year.
So probably about
from a 14.
So like 8 to 10 years ago from now, then.
And it's as far as part-time work, you can go find a part-time job doing anything that pays better.
Yeah,
it's just especially
and it's far less effort.
Or stress. Yeah.
If you take the role seriously and you're going to meetings and you're taking input, like it's a lot more time than just blowing people off.
Right.
Than just showing up for a city council meeting every 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I think you could easily get to like a mayor position around $2,500 a month and city council around $2,000. Don't quote me on those numbers. Maybe that's a little bit high, but
it's
somewhere right in there.
Estimate to throw out there,
and it would be much better. Much better served for really the people of Minot themselves, because you'd have people that would be even more committed to it, not having to be funded elsewhere. All right.
I don't want to see it get to a position where it's someone who doesn't need to rely on that income. Where they're so wealthy, they're just like, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. But like, in order to, there's a city council, you wake up and there's this special city council meeting that day that needs to be called. Okay, what job allows you to get away from that? You have to have worked at that job for a while to be like, I got to run at 3 o'clock today.
You have to be established, or you have to own your own business effectively.
Yeah, right. Which means that they've been around for a bit.
Yeah,
and the age isn't the problem. The point is that they probably have money in the bank account.
That's where it all stems from,
and that's what you're kind of addressing. All right, least favorite bills.
Leif, I think you had some that you wanted to talk about here.
I had some notes. I don't know what I did with them.
Tyler said he wanted to go for an hour and a half, so we're making that happen.
I said.
Marie says, my least favorite season is when government is in session. In my opinion, the citizens don't have time to keep up with a full-time legislature. All right.
So to be fair, I challenge you guys to come up with, because there's so many bills.
All right.
And
you want to know my favorite?
Oh, we're going favorite and bad bills, or
it's all in one.
Oh, okay.
But you mentioned it when you showed up, but I'd already identified it. Okay, so I might be stealing something from yours, but it's the rhubarb one. Like, what in the world are we doing? And this is my concern about a full-time legislature. Like, what other state fruit, vegetable, dog type, cat type, animal type are we going to get?
We have a state drink.
Yeah,
Our state beverage is milk.
Cannot be good. Unbelievable.
And
I need to find a different state.
I get the whole feel good,
But when you have
Does
900,
rhubarb make you feel good? Because it don't make me feel good.
I do like
No,
a good rhubarb
first
cake
of
or
all,
pie.
It's
I don't.
considered a vegetable. Why isn't it a fruit?
I don't know.
I guess not. It makes
just-
dessert good.
It's just sweet celery.
yeah.
There's only
like-
one lawmaker on that bill.
but it got 11 no votes. That's what's weird to me.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't get like 50.
My thing is, why are we wasting our time on bills like this when we have over 900 that have been submitted in a total of, what, a 4-month period that we have to get through it all?
Don't talk reason.
I know. How dare I?
Go away.
Practicality.
So that was your favorite. What's your worst?
It was all in one.
Oh, here,
that's it?
I'll give you my least favorite one. And this is one I've brought up quite a few times. I know I mentioned it the first time we talked about bills. I talked with it on podcast with Rob last week. It's HCR 3003. And that is the one that adjusts the voting requirements to get into, to get an amendment passed by vote.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are to get right now, ballot initiative happens. There we go. Term I was looking for, and you need 50.1%. One vote over 50%, it gets passed. This now changes the requirements to 60%. I cannot stand that. This was something that was shot down. It was more than this that was shot down last fall, but this was shot down last fall heavily by the people of North Dakota. We don't want to change this. And then the thing that gets me too is, if this does pass, it's one of those things. It only takes one more representative or senator to vote yes for it. Then all of a sudden, if it gets passed, everyone that wants to get a ballot initiative needs 60% of the votes to say
Yeah, that one's nasty.
Yeah, I don't like
That
it
one
at
is
all.
terrible.
Okay, I took a little bit of a different approach because
Yay.
I found so many bad bills. I thought, okay, where do I live? I live in District 3.
So you just attacked your representatives.
So I thought, well, maybe I should just address some of the bills there.
Yeah.
And now this is ironic because I think some of the best legislation and some of the worst come from the same individual. My senator, Mr. Bob Paulson.
You gotta love some of the stuff he's doing.
I think the hearing going on right now deals with, which is it? 2385 deals with basically stopping the selling of mobile home parks that are found to be in violation.
Yeah.
Years ago, I did some work on behalf of organizations. Like literally, we're running into sewage backup in people's yards. And because that's outside the jurisdiction of the city, it actually falls under the district health unit. Holding these people accountable is next to impossible.
Sure.
And when I say people, I'm talking about the property owners. It's kind of a different version of slumlords.
Yeah, it's a fine line between the person that's right. And a lot of times you have people that own the trailers, but then they are just renting
they're
the space.
handcuffed.
Yeah.
They can't, and because of other legislation, they can't move the trailers. It just becomes a mess. And quite often these mobile home parks are sold or transferred without even the people coming to inspect them. It's just, it sounds good on paper.
It's an investment for them.
And here we go. It looks like positive cash flow. I'll buy it. And this basically puts a hold on that if they're found to be in violation, is how I understand it. Now, what I'm not a fan of was a bill of his that failed.
Which one?
Was 1184, or he sponsored it, I guess. So it was not a Senate bill, but that involved digital assets to be invested. Now, digital assets, we're talking crypto.
Oh, yeah. No, this should be a good conversation right here.
Now, I agree with the notion of investing in precious metals. That's okay. But I am a little apprehensive of taking tax dollars. And there's also a resolution that is still out there of investing tax money into crypto and digital assets. Because when you think about it, what is a digital asset? It's computer data, whether it's in the form of a coin or not.
When you think about it, nobody can understand what crypto is.
And what it is the trading between us three, who thinks it's a valued,
Right.
who thinks it has more value, and by design, somebody's going to lose.
Well, that's the way it is with any asset, right?
Yes, but except for precious metals. Because then, okay, I'm the low guy in the totem pole. At least I can melt this down into jewelry. At least, what do
You
you do
have
with
something
data?
physical in your hand, yeah.
What do you do with it?
What if it gets? Yeah. What if it goes offline?
But you're not only us three. Are you having to assume? You're also having to assume that everybody else no longer values crypto.
Right, and that's pretty much what happens. That's why it you see the graphs, right? It's up, and then it just crashes.
But can't think of the big one. Bitcoin does not. It's pretty consistent. I mean, it's been on a huge rise right now. But for the past 20 years, it's 15 years.
Outside of COVID, I think COVID was the only time that it really tanked. Other than that, it's been consistently growing.
Yeah. I don't see a problem with investing some money into it.
I think you got to do it smart, though. You got to be wise about it. You can't invest.
Well, I mean, that's what you're going to say with anything. So what does that mean?
You can't invest in Haktua coin.
Yeah, I get that. It should be established crypto. You shouldn't be doing meme coins. Don't go to Dogecoin. I do that one for fun. Okay.
Dogecoin, not Doge, the department.
Yeah, because they're so different. Yeah.
So I think that we should a little bit invest in it. I know.
So the bill, which
what
was
is the bill?
Invest up to 10% of the school funds.
10%. Gotcha. Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know if I agree that high. I would have to look into that part more.
I also.
But are you? Let me ask you this: are you against investing into crypto with the state?
But personally, invest all you want into crypto.
No, I'm talking about the state. Yeah.
But
at the state level,
state.
Just generally, regardless of percentage or dollar amount.
Okay, first I'll answer your question. I'll say I have to say no at this point.
Yeah.
But here's the caveat that I want to mention. Mm-hmm. Where are we invested?
Yeah.
Cash assets, tax dollars. Where?
Well, I mean,
we don't know.
Yeah.
That's a whole.
That's a different conversation.
The legacy fund.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation.
We do not know. Even the legislators don't know.
Yeah.
Only the state investment board does.
But they show you how much they make every year.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah, and is that are we invested in something morally that we shouldn't be? Okay, this even your listeners. Like, how many people know that they're invested? Everybody talks about Bill 1.1, I think it's 1.4.
Hey, we were just talking about this.
The insulin cap.
KFYR is reporting roughly 100,000 organic eggs are stolen from a large egg producer in Pennsylvania.
Jeepers.
Stolen?
Yeah.
So now eggs are the...
Yeah, it's
the toilet paper 5 years ago.
Okay, but the insulin cap, insulin manufacturers, those dirty insulin manufacturers, right? Well, who's invested in them?
Yeah.
Public employees are.
Sure.
The teachers' fund sometimes is in different states.
How many mutual funds and equity firms around the country are? Yeah.
Our moral investments, there's no moral implication anymore. Our money is invested for us, so we don't pay attention. Mm-hmm. So the same thing happens at the state level.
That's fair. And I think there needs to be more transparency on the legacy fund. And that's one thing, too, that I've argued in the past is, if you want to start using the legacy fund to buy down property taxes, what happens 15 years from now if oil tanks or if something happens with an investment that went horrible and now all of a sudden the legacy fund's getting drained at 10 times the rate it would be? I mean, it's obviously you want it to be sustainable and be there for generations to come, but there's always a possibility, especially if you add such an expense like that onto it, that something catastrophic could happen with it.
Yeah. These bills, man.
Have another one or two you want to talk about, Leif?
Well, just for honorable mention's sake, let's go 1491, which is basically a transfer portal for high school athletes.
Oh, that's what we need.
Absolutely horrible idea, I thought.
No, are you sure?
Wait, what? It's a transfer portal for high school athletes?
It basically takes away all the restrictions.
I gotta look at this now.
Moving, like the High School Activities Association has restrictions on moving during season, stuff like that.
Okay.
And parents would sometimes get around it by claiming to separate or, getting an apartment here, there.
Yep.
And this basically just takes all those restrictions away.
Mm-hmm.
And what you would have is...
So you're saying you could theoretically, this is just me speculating off the top of my head hearing about this. You could have a private school that pays for the family of a very talented student athlete to move to their city.
Oh, basically, yeah.
I don't know if there's anything outlawing that, but that's what I'm hearing off the surface of it.
The restrictions, or I think it's a horrible idea.
Yeah,
to me, that's high school athletics. It's extracurricular activities. It's to provide opportunities for kids to play. Mm-hmm. It's not about...
Oh, they've already horribly commercialized high school athletics. And North Dakota isn't even that bad
crazy
compared to a lot of other places. You look at hockey, travel hockey, baseball is a year-round thing in most of the country. I mean, it's getting outrageous.
That's basically why Kyler dropped out
Of high school?
football.
Oh, football? I didn't go to college to play. I didn't go
commercial.
It was. They were forcing me to go to all the places, and I didn't like it.
Okay, do we need to get deep into debate here?
If you got one more, go for it.
Murray Stewart asked, "What other stocks does the state invest in?" And that's like the big question. We don't know.
That's the thing. If you can find out where that's specifically, like they'll give you generalities of like.
Yeah, the industries or but. You do not know.
If you can find the specifics, please let us know, Marie.
Yes. Where are we going?
Okay, so here's one. We might get some people fired up.
Good.
1373, the personhood bill. And the reason I can bring this up is I believe there are 4 local sponsors.
Van Wiegel, Hoverson, Wolf.
And Castaneda. If I pronounce that right.
That is,
he's the senator.
Oh, you're looking at it too. I was going to say, did you just guess that? Okay, you're looking at it.
Okay, now my take on this is if we don't know, are there, there's always unintended consequences.
Yeah, so
now,
basically
the way I read this
human
bill,
being includes an unborn child.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the way I read this is as soon as fertilization takes place, it would effectively then be creating...
It's considered a human instantaneously.
Like in vitro fertilization.
Let me just
would
read this.
Be
unborn child means an individual living human child before birth from the beginning of biological development at the moment of fertilization upon the fusion of a hormone. Oh, I've never said this word in my life, so I don't know how this is going to go.
Spermatozoon.
There you go, with a human ovum.
Remember, I had to say those like a few weeks ago.
Yeah. This chapter does not apply to the unintentional death of an unborn child resulting from acts performed under the usual and customary standards of medical practice during diagnostic testing, a procedure undertaken to save the life of a mother when accompanied by reasonable steps to save the life of the unborn child, or spontaneous miscarriage.
And I remember when we talked about this prior, I think one of the biggest things we identified that could be an issue is just any possible miscarriage that could happen. It feels like could be open or subjected to scrutiny at this point.
Right.
I know that was one thing that we discussed at that point. Yeah.
And now, from what I understand, keep in mind, I'm not that knowledgeable, but how it was explained to me, in vitro fertilization involves fertilizing many eggs and implanting them knowing that some are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And also fertilizing them knowing that they're going to die without being implanted.
Because it's a not necessarily a crapshoot, but it's known. It's known that it's the odds of it happening on the first go in the lab are minute.
Yeah. So, is this bill really necessary? Like, is determining personhood? I don't know. I have a problem with it.
What they're trying to do is fight against abortion. That's
what it comes down to.
That's the premise of this bill.
Really? Okay, that's sarcasm.
Yeah, but my point is, like, some of the stuff we're getting is into heavy technicalities here,
right?
And that's the frustration with abortion in general is it always, rather than going and trying to talk about the straight up issue of abortion, it always goes into technicalities rather than just talk about the issue. That's probably my biggest frustration with the topic of abortion.
Fair.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think this bill is really necessary. I think it's going to create more problems than it solves.
Yeah, and it's the goal of the bill is to make it where if you do abortion, then you can face criminal charges.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
which then brings a whole
different
discussion
conversation at that point too. Yeah,
beyond what the abortion, but that's the deal is if abortion happens, should there be criminal charge? And then the question that I have on it is this: if I have a late term abortion versus killing the baby after 1 week, what's the difference?
Sure.
What's the difference? And that's the answer that the people that are for abortion will, I don't know what their answer is to that, but I can't agree with them.
Yeah,
because the people that are fine with late term abortions.
Yeah, and by all means, I think there's a fine line of where it needs to be cut off at, but I'm not the expert to say where that line is. And I'm going deeper on this than what I intended. Whatever. We're here.
But that's the problem is nobody wants to talk about it either.
And no one wants to take that.
And when it comes up, it's always pushed back at this is insane and this is so far out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Well, let it be a talking point. Let's go find some common ground on this because how do we treat the human being so much different based off of one day?
Yeah.
Based off of 1 hour.
That's fair.
How do we treat them so much different?
I'm not disagreeing with that. That's a fair point.
Yeah. All right.
It's a point, Leif. It's a point. I don't know if we agree or not, but it's a point.
No, I think you raised a valid point.
Yeah.
It's just, again, with this one specifically, I think the biggest thing that we can identify and agree on is that this could possibly subject anyone that's had a miscarriage to being
and that's not fair.
That's exactly. And you can, I think that's the one really big ambiguous thing with this one that raises a question.
If you have a miscarriage, then you have to go to the doctor or whatever to prove that it was a miscarriage or something like that. That's already a trauma-filled time.
Yeah, that's not something that you
should. And I don't know that there's going to be ever a solution to fix that. So I don't know that legislation is the route to go for that.
That's fair.
Honestly.
That's fair. Leif?
How about one more honorable mention?
I was going to say, if you got one more, go for it.
We'll go with House Continuing Resolution 3020.
It's a good number.
They're up to 3020 for the HCRs. Oh, goodness. Okay. Which one is this?
A concurrent resolution urging North Dakota to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ.
And this is where I'm going with this. Have either of you guys been to a session and watched the floor or
we've watched?
I've watched it. I haven't been in person yet. Have watched it. Yeah.
If I wanted to go to church and watch a sermon, I would go watch Halverson at church. Like, I know you're a man of faith. Okay, I'm comfortable in my own faith. I don't need legislators using their legislative desk as a pulpit. I'm kind of done with it. And that's where I'm at.
I agree with that. I firmly believe in the separation of church and state. I think I just don't. I completely agree with this is something that a good and any fair Christian should accept, and this is a good point. But also, this is one thing that I don't think the state needs to necessarily get involved in. Yeah,
this is a very strong bill. With
it's very pointed. Yeah,
it's very direct and very precise, and I think that's where the separation of church and state that it might come into play. I think that sometimes the role of this separation of church and state gets used very loosely. And I know that some will disagree with this, but I don't buy into the argument that this country was not founded upon God. I don't buy into that argument. And so there was a tenet that was going to happen. I know I've talked about this before, that the deal was you shouldn't be forced into a specific religion. You shouldn't have to be forced into going to a certain church or that way. But I think that there should be protections but in the founding fathers, there was the common ground of they all believed in the same God. And now that doesn't even happen. I think that's where America needs to be careful. But that's my take on that.
That's fair. I think it's a consensus at that point that it was like everyone just agreed upon. They were all, largely at that time Protestant Christians that all believed in the same faith. I think Thomas Jefferson is one notable one that was fairly unreligious, but aside from him, I mean, everyone else effectively fell under that category.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a consensus thought process at that point rather than having to ingrain anything into it.
Right. Yeah. So when you talk about separation of church and state, I think it comes down to, you shouldn't all have to believe the same religion, if you want to call what I believe a religion. You don't have to believe that same exact tenets of it, but it's still founded upon God. That's where I go to with it. This is very specific, but I don't know, probably a little bit unnecessary.
I feel
you won't get people, if you want Christianity to overtake it, you won't be able to legislate that.
No, you can't force that to happen.
But that being said, be careful about taking God out of everything.
On the flip side, you can't. I think there are moral misdoings and misgivings that will come from the complete removal of religion. And that's we're going down the lines of something that could be a whole show in and of itself at this point. But
maybe it'll be a column.
Oh gosh, that could be a spicy one.
Yeah, I know. It'd be interesting to hear you write about it.
Oh, any final takes from anyone? Leif, you got anything else you want to throw at us?
Are we going to talk hot takes here?
You got one? If you
Maurice
got one.
Stewart says, I don't believe it's necessary, but it's epic. It certainly is.
Okay,
epic.
now I know you give him a bad time about being a Vikings fan, right?
No, he deserved it, right?
Is there an association there with him not winning? Or are you trying to refer to him as a loser by any means? I hope not.
He is not a loser.
You are amongst a champion right now.
Oh, no.
I know. What's happening?
I know where this is
What
going.
is happening? Oh.
Now, you won an award recently with some bragging rights, right?
I did.
You mentioned this earlier.
I did.
You got to explain what it is.
Yeah, break it down.
And I did even reference it earlier,
Yeah,
too.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Last month, for any of you that don't know, Leif and I are very distant cousins. Our mutual family had a little bit of a late Christmas get together, and there's a thing that we all make. It's a dish. It's commonly referred to as klub or potato klub. We all call it kroob, with an R instead of the L, and it's cooked a little bit different. We won't get into the specifics, but
Here we are.
every family group has their own kind of version of how they make it, and we all cook it up together, and
it's a fight amongst our family on how to make it.
Well, I participate with a lot of my aunts and uncles, and so they're a lot more competitive towards each other. And
competitive is an understatement.
Yes,
I was called by my cousin to come and be an umpire.
Yeah, you were the judge.
No, you can't be a judge anymore. I can't taste it and test it because
that's true.
The whole reason it's set up the way it is. Now, you go through the line. Nobody knows which dish is whose.
You're not supposed to.
You're handed a token so you can go vote later. I felt like I was an election marshal.
You were.
That's why I was invited. That's the weirdest part. Kent wasn't like, hey, stop by the hotel. It was, hey, we need you as an umpire.
We need you to come for the kroob contest.
Which is fine, because I got to see some relatives, family's always good.
We talked.
But there is trash talking.
I love that.
It gets, and the whole reason there's a vote, tell them why.
Why is there a vote?
Because somebody has more grandkids than somebody else, and they might vote for...
That's why it has to be a secret ballot.
That's why it's a secret ballot.
Because if the family comes with more people, they're going to take the vote because it's so often segmented into who.
This is how competitive it is. Ellie,
my grandmother,
your grandmother, my aunt. How old is she? She's got to be.
She's in her late 80s. She's
late 80s, almost 90.
Yep. She's going to be, I think, 89 this year.
Kent was talking to me, and then it'd be his sister-in-law came up and said, "Oh, I didn't get a token." And then the pressure's on me is like, oh, you're not doing your job monitoring the balloting.
You got to figure out the
and
elections.
I was very careful. I says, no, you have not voted yet. I haven't seen you vote yet. So Ellie, Kent's mom, who's in her 80s, looks at him square and just says, oh, you screwed up.
Well, and there's a further note to that, because I think the only reason I won is because my Uncle Kent thought that his dish was actually mine. So I think he told a couple of his relatives to vote for the wrong number.
Yes.
So I think that's the only reason I actually won.
That guy didn't even know what was his anymore.
Exactly.
You had him all twisted.
That's my thought on why I actually won. But
that's hilarious.
Thanks for that, Leif.
I will say this: it's an entertaining time. It's competitive. Oof.
You had a hot take, bro?
Yeah. LA Lakers are going to win the finals this year.
This guy.
Luka.
This guy.
You got one,
Give
Jonathan?
me patience. Yeah, the Mavs are going to win the finals.
Oh,
No,
that's actually I don't know. Actually, what take is hotter? The Mavs, I think, are better right now than the Lakers.
Yeah, probably plug and play.
But
Kyrie's still going to be able to work. Anthony Davis will be able to work with them.
But can Kyrie and Anthony Davis stay healthy? That's the real
Anthony
thought.
Davis has had his most healthy years.
Last 2-3 years, yeah, undoubtedly. But playoffs matter.
Yeah. I think my hot take is going to go to the point that I drove earlier. That yes, Minot, for real Minot, it's time. Get some momentum behind it. Let's get some raises for city council. Let's get some raises for the mayor.
I think that's a great hot take, and I think that's a great way to end this episode.
Let's rock with it.
I think we can all get on board with that. I second that.
Yeah.
The Dakotan has
passed a lot of work.
Passed said motion.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on today, Leif. It's been a lot of
this has been a long
stimulating conversation. Yeah. Hour and 35 minutes of it.
Oh wow!
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Another 4 hours and call it a city council meeting.
We're getting close. Yeah, you had to have a bathroom break in order to have one of those.
Exactly. When it gets to that 2 hour mark, you gotta put on a little break.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for watching this episode of Minot Talk here at the Dakotan every Tuesday, 1 p.m. It happens at 1 p.m. Don't worry about our graphics if they say 2 p.m. It means 1 p.m.
We're getting it fixed.
Also happens at 8 a.m. on Thursday mornings, Indie Talk.
Yeah.
When I'm gone, sometimes it doesn't happen, but when I'm here, it does.
Exactly.
And that's all right.
It's happened a couple times.
And this week, we're going to have a special episode with the host of Let's Talk About It Minot, Rob Fuller.
Oh, is he going to be on with us?
No, he's not. It's going to be his own podcast.
You got me excited for
That's going to be a special episode that people should want to listen to.
You should, yeah, undoubtedly.
Because we're going to be breaking down what happened to see 5 city council people change their votes being behind the city manager's recommendations to then changing it to keep the existing interim chief police in place.
Make sure you watch out for that later this week.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.